All right, well, let's get started. We're going to start with the simplest thing first, getting started in a garden. For those of you who've never had a garden before, you have a number of options depending on your yard, the size of your yard, whether you have a field, okay? So what you want to do is prepare the soil, okay? So let's go down here and look at the typical yard. Has probably grass or sod. So you can't plant in grass. It's just going to compete with the vegetable crop that you're growing or berry crop you're growing. So you want to turn the sod over so that it rots and decays and becomes organic matter, nutrient-rich organic matter for your crops. But that's going to take a while. So we could, depending again on the size of your yard, the size of your garden that you're going to deal with, you can use a shovel and turn the sod over and chop it a little bit. The problem with this is that if you've got a bigger garden, it's going to take a long time for that to break down, okay? So if you've got the time, get started early, sometime in March. If the ground's not frozen, here in southern New England, the ground is, with climate change, you never know what the conditions are going to be. But here it is the end of March, it's a beautiful sunny day, and you could turn this over. But it's going to take a few weeks for that to decay, at least a few weeks, and rot. So I've developed, and I haven't developed it, it's another method you could use. You could put cardboard down. You could put cardboard down, make sure you get all the tape off the cardboard, anything that's going to be loaded with chemicals. Lay the cardboard down and put straw or hay on top of that, maybe in the fall. And over the winter and into early spring, it's going to decay. So this particular area right here has had cardboard put down. And what I did was I put straw over that, and I put some fairly well rotted cow manure on top of that cardboard. Let's look at what the conditions are like now in the spring. So remember, the philosophy, the goal of this method of gardening is to create soil life. One of the creatures that is absolutely essential to this working effectively are earthworms. They mine the soil, they burrow through the soil, they aerate the soil. Their castings are nutrient rich. So when we turn this over, hopefully we'll see some earthworms. Remember, what was under here was cardboard, okay? So we're going to turn this over, and maybe we turn it over like 6 to 8 inches. Turn it over. You notice there's no cardboard. There's a nice big earthworm, okay? There he is, okay? That's a good sign. Also, we want to make sure that our soil has the proper pH. So what that means is that the soil is not too acidic. It's slightly acidic, maybe a 6.5. One thing you could do if you're a beginner is you could take a variety of soil from different parts of your yard that you're going to plant, and you could have a soil test done. Usually at the local university, they'll do a soil test, and they'll recommend to you what your soil needs, and they'll tell you what the pH is. If your pH is too low, you add lime, okay? When we do our soil blocks, we'll be adding lime to our soil block mix, okay? So you notice there's no cardboard. I can see little residue of it here and there. And there was probably some newspaper put in here also. You know, not the newspaper, the colored newspaper, but regular newspaper is usually soy ink, so it breaks down in the soil. Okay, try to find some more earthworms. Sometimes the worms go really deep if it's a little bit cold at night. Now yesterday I did a section of this and there were lots of worms. There's another one. This is very easy to turn over. Unlike the sod, you turn this over and maybe in another week or so, this is ready to be prepped, raked out, which I'll be showing you later how we do that. And you've got a nice, hopefully fertile bed. Okay? All right, so that's if you're a beginner. You can also use a rototiller. A rototiller is a machine, like a tractor, that has tines. And those tines chop everything up, chop it up. And the problem with the rototiller is that it pulverizes the soil. And it creates a soil structure that is not as beneficial as this hand turning to the microorganisms and the earthworms. It can chop up a lot of earthworms. But if you have a fairly big space and you don't have the time, at least initially, if you use a rototiller, it can chop up the sods pretty quickly, okay? We're gonna go over here and look. I'm looking for a few more earthworms. This cardboard is more recent. Let's see where they are. There you go. There's another one. Okay. Oh, there's some newspapers. Okay. Now, in a space like this, I'll probably be planting tomatoes here. So later on in the season, when we planted tomatoes, I'll be digging holes in here. And even if this is a little bit rougher, that doesn't matter. This little worm here is called a red wiggler. And red wigglers are absolutely essential for breaking down waste, okay? So these you'll often find in your compost pile, which we'll get to in a minute. These are red wigglers. They're little, and sometimes in compost piles that are rich in these, there's thousands of them, okay? So we don't want to create conditions that make these little critters stressed out, okay? So that's this section of the garden. This is relatively new. Okay, the main garden over there is probably 14 years old. So this is just a couple of years old. I'm going to tell you a little bit about cover crops, okay? So you're adding waste to the soil. Another method of enriching the soil, okay, is that you plant what's called a cover crop. So this is essentially what we call a green manure. It's a living thing, and in this case, we have winter rye. Now this winter rye is really small, okay? It's really small. It should be a lot more vigorously growing than this right now. The problem is we've had an epidemic of rabbits around here. So the rabbits have been pruning all of the cover crops. Winter rye is a cover crop that survives the winter, and it enriches the soil. When you turn this into the soil, it decays and releases nitrogen and organic matter into the soil. It protects the soil in the winter. So we're going to turn over some of this winter rye. I also use legumes, which are nitrogen fixing plants like beans and peas, plants like hairy vetch, and we till those into the soil also. In the main garden there we had winter rye, we had hairy vetch and oats. And all of these things grow nice green growth, and then you turn the green growth into the soil, and it rots and decays and enriches the soil that way. Okay, so what we do with this, if you come over here, you can see there's a little bit of winter rye here, but again, it's not substantial because of the rabbits. When we go to the main compost pile, we'll see more winter rye over there. Okay? So we just turn that over. So I try to do a little bit of this every day. I have a pretty good sized garden, and I try to do like maybe an hour or 15, 20 minutes, depending on the day and the weather. I try to turn as much over as I can.